Hey friend, welcome back to Bible Tract Echoes. I'm Micah McCurry, your host, but today I get to introduce you to Miss Judy Garris, the dear wife of the late Dr. Ron Garris, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of background as we dive in today. Brother Garris and his wife traveled for many years in evangelism. After he pastored there in the Jacksonville, Florida area, God worked in his life about a prison ministry that became the Rock of Ages prison ministry, now known worldwide as certainly here in America has had a phenomenal impact. What a blessing it is, the work they do with the incarcerated, those behind bars. But Mrs. Garris is going to share with us some memories from the last few years of Dr. Ron Garris's life, and she's also going to share an incredible story of the last message Brother Ron preached. Now, he preached this back in a day, this last message, by video. This was back before Zoom, before FaceTime, before all that sort of thing. He preached it to hundreds of young men at the Midwest Christian Boys Football Camp. That's actually the camp where my wife and I met. To God be the glory. We, yes, of course, fell in love, and it was very romantic, but it happened, if you can believe it, at a football camp that we call man camp. But I recall sitting in that frigid tent. Somehow in the middle of August, they got that tent so cold. And I remember looking at that screen at a man who just about a month later would pass away and go to heaven as he preached from a wheelchair on the projector screen. And it did a work in my life as it did with many others. I'm going to ask you to listen in to this dear lady tell us about this hero of the faith.
Then the last few years, we had planned to try to slow down because his health, he was diabetic, so he had issues with that at times. But it just seemed like his health was going down. And we had remodeled some things on our home, trying to prepare it to make it more comfortable and usable, with the idea of slowing down, where he'd maybe only go preach one or 2 weeks a month and just be home more.
Absolutely.
The Lord blessed with a fantastic vice president that was there to handle the day-to-day ministry and great workers. But we got all that done, and it just seemed like he felt worse and worse. We finally got to a meeting. We were at the church that he had pastored. They had us come back every year for homecoming and a revival. And we were there, and our son lived in that area. So after the meeting, we had planned to spend a week with him. And Ron just got so sick he couldn't hardly get around. One of the families, we called him, one of the families from the office drove down, and the gentleman drove Ron in our car back to Tennessee, and I rode with the wife. Went to the doctor, and they did all kinds of tests, but they couldn't find out what was wrong. And on my birthday that year, after being in the hospital, in and out for several times after we went home, they came in and told us that they discovered it was cancer. And by that time, the cancer was all through his body, and they offered to do radiation. He refused it because the cancer was related to radiation that he had been exposed to in the military. So he lived 3 months from the time they diagnosed it was cancer until he passed away.
Wow. So walk us through that message he preached from the wheelchair, as maybe you recall it. Maybe certainly the 300 men that were there that listened to it. Obviously, it was impact for us. What did that happen after he was diagnosed with cancer?
Yes.
Okay, because when I was doing the math, you said he died, you said 3 months after. I was thinking June 9th. I was wondering when your birthday was because I figured it was near football camp. is June 9th. Then football camp is always the first full week of August. And so talk us through what you recall about that.
They, I can't. I don't. They did it in his office at our house, in the wheelchair in his office. I did not go in for the message. I have no idea what. I've never heard it.
Sure.
But he just preached there from the house, and someone apparently I'm sure it was from the office, because we did have where they would video. We had a video studio at the Rock of Ages. I'm sure someone from there had come and done it, but I was expelled to my domain.
To your knowledge, was that the last message he ever preached? Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't long after that he was confined to bed.
Wow.
He would fall. I would roll him around in the wheelchair and run him into things. But when he would try to, walk, but he had a lot of problem. He would fall a lot. And I'd have to call a neighbor. We had a neighbor that was very close to us, and either he or my pastor would have to come pick him up. There was one time I was in the back of the house in our bedroom, and I heard him call, and I went out, and he had fallen. And I decided I was going to try to help him get up. Well, the harder I tried, the worse it got, and I ended up falling on top of him. And he finally said, "Wifey, if you just get off of me and go away, I think I can get up myself." But
if you thought about the different things he preached and how the Lord used him, if he was here now almost 20 years after he passed, if there was something that you felt like was a burning desire of his to communicate to people, would there be something that would come to mind that just seemed to be so central to him?
Prayer and soul winning were his whole heart. When we were in the motorhome, the first thing he did was pick a specific place that was his prayer time, his prayer spot. He had one in the house. When we'd be in a motel, we'd get in and he'd unpack his briefcase onto the table that they had in the room, and he would find him as his prayer spot for the week. And he just had a love for souls. He always had to be sure he had a shirt that had a pocket. He always had tracts in his pocket. Miss Woodward asked me the other day if there was a time of passing out tracts of someone that we knew that got saved, or, we could tell. I don't know that this person got saved, but before he was called to pastor, he was still in the Navy, and we were living in the house and in the church we were saved in. But one evening, he preached at the mission every month in Jacksonville. And we're not sure if it was one of the mission men or someone he met on the street. But one night, there was a knock on our door, and he answered, and there was a police officer. And he wondered if we knew such and such a person. And of course, the name wasn't familiar. And the officer said they had found this man dead. Apparently, he had been murdered in Texas. And he had a gospel tract with our church name, with Ron's name, or with the church we were members of, and Ron's name written on it with our telephone number. And they just wondered if we knew him and could give them any information on him.
Wow.
One of the federal prisons in Missouri, he held services, and the chaplain asked him to visit and witness to one of the inmates that he had been dealing with. The inmate prayed with him, and after he was saved, after he prayed, the chaplain told Ron that was the man that was in prison and had been accused of being Ivan the Terrible. Now, he's declared he wasn't that same man, but he was part of the concentration camp things during World War II. But it's just, you don't know, and you don't always have access to know exactly. Most of the men that he would deal with never had a possibility of getting out of prison. But now that he's gone and I'm not able to travel and do a lot, I correct the inmate lessons.
Amen.
And it's exciting and a blessing to me to see how the men grow, even though they may never get out. The Lord deals with them, and they do mature and grow in the Lord and witness in the prison, not to the other inmates, but they become a testimony to the officers. And we've had seen many officers saved because of the testimony of how the Lord has matured and grown an inmate that had gotten saved.
What a blessing it is to know that we get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And I'm so very thankful for Mrs. Garris taking her time and joining us. If you have a question for myself or Mrs. Garris, maybe you'd like some clarification on something, or maybe something she said triggered something inside you, the Lord's working on your heart, I'd love to pass on a kind word or another question for Mrs. Garris. You can text me and I'll pass on that thought. Text me at 309-316-7240. That's 309-316-7240. The Midwest Christian Boys Football Camp. It's always the first full week of August. It's coming up very soon. That's actually the reason why I'm releasing this interview this week. It's coming up soon. I'd ask for you to pray. I've had the chance to be a part of 6, 7, 8, 9 different weeks of camp already this year, but there are few weeks as impactful as the week of Man Camp. If you'd like more information, you can go to mancamp1994.org. That's mancamp1994.org. This will be the 31st year of Man Camp. I'd ask you to pray that God does a great work in the lives of the 300 plus boys that will be there. Thank you so much for listening. We'll conclude our interview with Miss Garris tomorrow. Have a great day for His glory. God bless.
Thank you for joining us today for Bible Tract Echoes, a ministry of Bible Tracts Incorporated. If you would like to receive a free sample booklet of all of our tracts, you can contact us by calling 309-828-6888. That's 309-828-6888. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 130, Dwight, Illinois 60420. A faster way to contact us is to go to our website at BibleTractsInc.org. That's BibleTractsInc.org. There you will find more information about our ministry and details on how you can support Bible Tracts Incorporated. Thanks for listening, and may the Lord richly bless you as you serve Him.